So Ethan, thank you for joining us today. And Ethan is soon to be licensed lay pioneer in the Diocese of Southwark, already pioneering in Southwest London. So Ethan, great to talk to you today. So thanks for being here.
No problem, Ian. Thanks for inviting me.
So what we're doing as part of this is to explore how do we do fresh expressions with de-churched people, and that is sometimes we talk about, but we don't really talk about examples of it. And I'm really interested about what you've been doing. So do you want to say something a little bit about your context, Ethan, and
Yep.
what you were hearing? Where are you pioneering,
Yep.
and what's been some of the needs that you're seeking to respond to?
Well, my context came from the fact that I was the publican of the church in the parish that I go to. I think you see all walks of life in church, and you see them across a bar and a pub. People come there for the good points of their life, and they come there for some of the worst. And when they've got problems and things at home and they want some space, I find it interesting that they can go to a pub just to get away sometimes, whether they're having a pint or they're having an apple juice or whatever, tea, coffee. So it came out of those conversations where people would see me serving, carrying the cross, which I do occasionally in church, and then going, "Oh, but you run a pub," and the conversation would usually start with, "How can you run a pub and go to church?" It was as if they were incompatible. So that conversation, I mean, it begun about 3 or 4 years ago. I had different ideas at different points about what could I do to connect, because once I got into the conversations, people actually went quite deep, and a lot of the people were either hurt from things that happened in the church, not necessarily by vicars or people in authority, but sometimes just fellow Christians. And they just stopped going, and they would go out of kids. A lot of the demographic of my church, pub and church, is young families, or the elderly. There's a bit of a void, so I stand out when I go on a Sunday because I'm the youngest by about 20 years. It's not an exaggeration. It is what it is. But it was just interesting, those conversations that started from them seeing me. On one occasion was a baptism. I was carrying the gospel on the day of their kid's baptism, and then I was serving them pints at the pub, and it blew their mind. And we got talking, and then they said, "Yeah, but I just find church so intimidating." And that particular person, Tom, said, "But if we did something in the pub and talk about Jesus or talk about uh, what it means to be a Christian, I'd probably go." And then I went away and thought about it, reflected on it, and then I just decided one day, let me speak to my vicar and see what he thinks. And I thought he'd laugh me out or say no, but actually he supported me about a year and a half ago, but I didn't have the confidence to do it until halfway through my training in the first year. Then I think I pitched it to yourself or David and said, "I'm thinking about this." And then I got encouragement. And then it sort of took off from there, really.
Fantastic. So what I'm hearing then is that they were de-churched people living in a particular locality. Yeah. Do you want to say something about the context? That'd be really interesting about, what it, so some of these people have fallen out of
Yeah.
churches. Some of them have just go to churches to get their children baptized, but don't
Yeah.
attend.
So
Yeah.
so two, yeah, so the two main categories, just because the of this particular parish, was that the parish burnt down 20 years ago. So then they had 6 years of meeting in a church, sorry, meeting in a community hall or a primary school. That fragmented itself. People then started going to other churches locally because they wanted a church. But when the church came back together, in 2000, and doesn't matter, I think it's 2006 when they rebuilt it, the divisions were so in depth. A lot of people left. A lot of people found it a unique opportunity to showcase themselves. The architects were looked after because they helped design it. The lawyers were looked after because, oh, I can help with the contracts with the nursery downstairs. And then what happened was primarily the lower paid or not middle class, working class, were sort of left to just either join in or disappear. And that's exactly what happened. And then a lot of them just found that quite really just hurtful. And then they only went back because the kids, whether it was to get into a particular Church of England school, or whether it was just to get the kids baptized, was the only reason they came back into church. And I just find that quite hard to listen to. And actually, that time of a church burning down and being rebuilt, should be a coming together. Obviously things have changed dramatically since then. It's, 2 generations or so ago in terms of church life for us. Um, yeah, and then the other context is just life. A lot of people just don't find it relatable.
I'm so excited about the idea that the pub then is a hub place
Yeah.
where somehow your role being a publican creates an opportunity for real relationships. And it sounds like the pub then has been almost like an alternative place for engagement to
Yeah, I
be.
mean, the vicar, as I say, I was quite scared of it all, but actually, when he got engaged with it and was listening to me and the stories, he's actually had his eyes open, and he calls the pub the second. Some, dare I say this, controversially, it's like a minor church in a parish that doesn't open for Eucharist, but it's open for everything else. It's open for chats, for conversations, and actually, through me opening up that door, the clergy that are there have started to use the pub as a place to meet people, and people are more inclined to meet them and take them up on their offer when they say, "Do you want to go for a coffee at the Rosendale?" It's a landmark, it's the only pub in the whole area in the parish. It's been there for 175 years. It really stands out, and a lot of people have got married there, which is another interesting one because it's known, does about 70 weddings a year. So people who've opted for a non-church marriage but want their kids baptized have it's that blend of where real life sort of intertwines with the that missional part of the church, I suppose.
So, how have you responded to some of these spiritual needs in terms of activity? And is there a name? And how have you responded to these kind of? Sounds like they've moved from deconstruction to hunger for
Yeah.
reconstruction. Interested to hear about how have you responded to
So two things came out of it from my conversations. The first one was people wanted an opportunity to talk, to discuss. As some of them said at the start, God is, I find God complicated. Am I the only one that finds God complicated? I just can't reconcile, how do we believe that Jesus was true God and true man, and all those big questions, and end of life has come up with the elderly. And it's how do I live a normal life with 2 children in 2022 when the Bible was written, if we believe 2000 years ago. So it's those big questions, one. And then the other was, I'd love to come together, but I find the church intimidating. Exactly what I said was the music, for example. So what I did was I put out the feelers, put up some posters and said, if you're interested, get in touch. And then just conversations in person at the bar. So there was a group of about 20 people had sort of said, oh yeah, I'd be interested. And then I literally just sent an email out and said, look, here's what I'm thinking. Send me some suggestions. And I got a barrage of, oh, it'd be great if we discuss this. It'd be great if we discuss that. And someone said, well, it would be actually be great if we could just pray and then have a pint. So that was where the name came from. I went prayer and a pint. So let's pray together, come together, and then let's go down, grab a pint or soft drink, tea, coffee, teetotalers welcome, and then go back upstairs and have a conversation. Some weeks the group have asked for a more defined theological discussion sometimes, which people will go away and prepare for, which I find amazing, is that some people will go away and actually research what they believe, or they'll go away and read Paul's letter to the Romans and come back with their views the following week. Or we've literally sat down and said, how was your week? And we've ended up talking through all sorts of real life, abortion, politics, what's happening in our government, and how you reconcile all that with sort of living a Christian life. And it really grew out from from obviously listening to, we'll have a pint and we'll talk. And it actually evolved so much more. They asked for music. What type of music would you like? There seems to be a majority loved Tazy. So then let's have a Tazy to begin to collect ourselves. Then it actually turned out some of the people, 2 or 3, already did evening prayer. So then they were doing evening prayer privately themselves at home and then coming and hearing the same readings and the same psalms. Now that was only maybe 2, because their only connection with church was to do evening prayer or morning prayer. They never went to church otherwise, but they felt a duty to do that. And interestingly, some of them were very specific, Monday to Friday, and then don't do it on Saturday and Sunday. So then I took evening prayer and deconstructed it. I knew of the Carmela community in Ireland from using some resources before. in my previous ministry. And then the other one was Iona, I drew from. So I've sort of made a hybrid service that it's not too heavy. We don't do two readings, we do one. Dare I say it, the readings are generally New Testament because it's a bit more free flowing for a conversation afterwards, I find. Taking that reading that we had this morning about Nebuchadnezzar, never mind talking about what that reading's about, but even being able to say the names, people have went on. So then the worship aspect came from them, and we trialed different things and sort of built.
So that's interesting. So I'm thinking about, so you've got this connection, you've got this event, which I'm hearing prayer and a pint, which I really like that idea. So how do you think, so these are people who are refinding their Christian faith by the sounds of it and digging deep. How do you think this is going to grow into, because I'm thinking that people have described churches as a mixture of worship, mission, and community. How do you, because there's the danger with some of this stuff, isn't it, that it all ends up about me and I consume it about me and I go to an event for me. How do you see this maturing as an authentic, fresh expression of church?
So what surprised me about it, so I really believe if you're going to do something, you make it regular. People have busy lives, and this is where I sort of disagree with, yes, you can have a Bible group in church or a theological group in church and meet on the last Sunday of each month or the last Tuesday. But people have busy lives. I myself don't get to church every Sunday. If I can't, I'll maybe try and find it an online, or I'll go on a Tuesday when I'm off work. That's just the nature of my job. So from the offset, I said, we'll do it every Tuesday. So if people can only come once a month, they can still dip in. But what that meant was that people have a regular pattern. So they're either here 2 times out of 4 or 1 times out of, whereas if I only did it once a month, I really do believe I wouldn't have the group that I have. And that connection between those who only turn up maybe once every 6 weeks still feel connected. But the way I know that things are moving positively is the fact that they're going out. It surprised me. They're going out and telling their neighbors, or taking the service sheet. Like, it's only a double-sided A5. And, they take it. I posted it in my neighbor's letterbox and we started talking about it. She's an ex-Methodist, but really wants to come. Is she welcome? And I'm like, yeah, come along. So it's quite interesting because I talked, I think, with you on another occasion or the earlier about the Acts of the Apostles and that mission. And it's interesting to go out among people, but they've taken what we are doing on a Tuesday, telling their neighbors and friends. And then we have had people appear. I just reflect on how interesting it is, and I'm trying to be aware and listen to that, how it's being communicated out. I've so far only had a positive, I don't want to sound, I thought there'd be a negative. People go, oh, it's just a group of churchy people meeting in a room to talk about Jesus and, what sort of worship do they do? But actually, people are having real conversations about it and openly talking about, well, come and join. And then they've brought their friend. And it's a diverse group of ages as well. There's quite a few elderly de-churched, who, for them, it's the only time they leave their house, actually, other than to go to Tesco's once a week. And it's that meaning, they come Ivel is 75, but she has the same great crack and conversation with the 30-year-old sitting beside her, and she has her glass of wine because she doesn't drink beer. She's campaigning for it to be called wine in worship. And someone else wants martini and matins just because they like but it's that engagement, and I just find blessed that they want to engage and telling people. So it's sort of self-grown. And the numbers are, like any church activity, they can be some weeks up to double numbers, 12, 13, or other weeks it's maybe 3, 4. But it has that blend that people can just feel they can pop in when they wish,
And so that sounds like it's been largely encounters of you and word of mouth. Have you used social media and website to plug it at all?
So that's the next step. I have done some tweets, and the tweets that I've done have been really well shared. And I knew I need to unlock that potential whenever other vicars were emailing me in the deanery. What are you doing? Can you tell me about it? The area dean asked for a poster so he could send it out to the other churches. I have had 3 people that I know of specifically come from other parishes have joined for once or twice with us. But I think there's definitely something to be unlocked using the social media aspect, which you'll know from my time in lockdown. I really engaged with that, and was one of the reasons I decided I wanted to go into pioneering, was I seen that you know, people are sitting at home on their phone making a Facebook ad about what we're doing, social justice, whether it's food bank or how to help each other. Now it's keeping warm. You can really engage with people who are not churched at all, or as in this particular concept, people who are unchurched and need that nudge. You know, like one of the people who turned up said, you know, I can't believe the church is with tweeting, you know, because I did a paid ad, so it popped up. You know, it was £5 for it to be live for 2 or 3 days beforehand, and people were like, "Oh, I was." And one person said, "I was sitting on the toilet and was going through Twitter and seeing because they follow the community groups, they follow those sort of big tweeters that share things. So yeah, so it's been amazing to hear that in the limited part of social media that it has already reached out, but that is the next step, is really to unlock that sort of online presence. I plan to do a website specifically for Prayer in a Pint, for two reasons. One, because I think it's important to keep the integrity of the original group, and what it means, but also there is another parish that really wants to do it. And I haven't got to that stage of how would I, or, you know, they're asking me for permission and things and how could I help. So there's conversations I want to have obviously with yourselves, about how best to do that. But it's just interesting to hear that it is to be.
And I'm really interesting about the place of dialogue to help people move from deconstruction and pain to reconstruction. It's really interesting to hear. So it sounds like lots of people didn't really need much help. It was almost then like they needed the space to do that. Because I'm aware that there was this thing called Holy Joes that Dave Tomlinson did ages ago, where people were very angry, were stuck in forms of deconstruction rather than reconstruction. But that hasn't been your experience by the sounds of it.
No, I think because of the dynamics of the group, because there's people there who are in their 70s and there's people who are in their 30s, 40s. Right. So when you might have someone be angry or someone have that real emotional attachment to something that's happened, or with church, or with their faith, or a moment in their life, whether it's death, sickness, it's also been a blessing to have people in their 70s who can draw on the experience. Now they themselves, I think everyone in the group has been affected, and so I think we've all been. I think everyone could sit back and see how they've even just felt uncomfortable. I think we can all think of an experience of that. And I think that's part of the group dynamic, is everyone so far, the group has been able to sort of support each other, that they can feel safe to say that. And, you know, there's people who've turned up here were strangers to me, strangers to most people in the room, but felt comfortable enough to just have that chat. And there's been times where we've left an hour's conversation. That's an important part, is that we have a time frame. It's structured, because what I didn't want was a rabbiting discussion that never came to an end. So we deliberately pray from 6:30 together to around 20 minutes to 10 to 7. And then people can go away, go to the toilet, get their drink. And then from 7 to 8. So everyone knows that sort of stops the rabbiting and the sort of getting lost. And we try and keep it on a path. But that's key, because you don't have people who just get on their soapbox and sort of just rant away, you know, because there's that sort of dynamic. But I do think it's key that we've people with different life experiences, people of different faiths even. You know, it's been interesting to hear talking with people who may come from a Methodist background as a child, then move to the Church of England as an adult, and even then with those two have left church, you know.
So if people want to find out this amazing story, then if people want to find out more about it, I know you're in the process of sorting out social media and website, but is there an immediate place that you to mind that shortly will be somewhere people can see what you've been doing?
I mean, right now, you can go on the All Saints West Dulwich website, Google it, you'll find it. But I'm hoping by next week, so maybe by the time people see this or listen to it, whenever, that my hope is that if they search prayerinapint.org.uk, they should be able to find it. But definitely there'll always be a tab somewhere on the All Saints West Dulwich page where people can definitely get it.
So what I hear is prayerinapint.org.uk. Yeah.
.org.uk.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ethan. Really inspiring story about what is possible. And I love the idea of the pub as a medium for mission, as a hub place.
Yeah.
And how important that is. So interesting. All right. Ethan, thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.